Okay. Hello, friends. Thanks for joining the Ignite call. This is November 4. We've got the pre-KubeCon edition, which maybe, 12 days until craziness starts for everybody in Kubiland. And today, in addition to Chanwit and I, we also have Mark Unice, who also works for Weaveworks on the call. And we've got an agenda where we're going to be discussing a few things. So I'll go ahead and share my screen just so that we've got a recording of everything that we are talking about. Great. So the first point that we wanted to bring up today, thanks for getting all of the agenda spec'd out beforehand, is this issue from the Firekube repository, which does relate to Ignite. We have a user who is Codearen. Has anyone chatted with this person, Jimmy? I guess outside of like GitHub issues, like maybe Slack or something like that. Oh, Mark, you might be
Sorry.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have not. I have not spoken to this person. I just saw the issue when I was looking through the backlog, and Chanwit had already replied to it, which is awesome. So yeah, but I'm thinking after reading the issue that it might be tied with the Footloose server work that we put in that allowed us to do scaling from within the cluster, and I'm wondering if that's what it can't talk to.
So the Footloose server bit, is that self-hosted or does that run in just like a Docker container?
That is a great question. I don't know, Lee. I thought it was just a process that runs from the setup.sh, but I don't even think it
Oh,
was in a container.
oh.
I can look real quick. Unless Chanwit knows off the top of his head.
So does the setup sh just run in like a non-blocking fashion or something in like another terminal, and then like you just change your Git repo in terminal two?
Yeah, let me take a look.
I mean, to me, the fact that the Kubernetes cluster is not running after you reboot a machine is not entirely surprising. There's no Ignite daemon, and there's no restart policy support for Ignite. I'm not sure if we're using a restart policy with Footloose when we're using Docker containers.
I, if I recall correctly, is might be relating to the network namespace or something. I think one of the
Uh,
audit is that he 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 could bring the VM apps by deleting some file. But
yeah, these VMs are not going to get the same IP addresses when they restart, which will probably break Kubernetes. Yeah, that will for sure break things. We likely need to do some CNI work.
yeah, it's I think it's about namespace things or it's network namespace thing or CNI.
Uh, yeah, we've had several users now have issues with not being able to have stable IPs. So this is there's no Ignite D. There's no restart policy support. Does Footloose set restart always? Or
You mean on the Kubernetes node?
for Docker? Yes, the nodes themselves, right? So the user is reporting that when you restart the bare metal host, the Kubernetes cluster is not running. I think it's reasonable that a user would expect that if they installed Firekoop, I can empathize with why they would expect the Kubernetes cluster to be running after the node restarts, right? In fact, it almost would be very surprising, right, to a user that Kubernetes is not running, right, because they installed something. But from an implementation side, I'm not surprised that it's not running because we don't do, to my knowledge, especially with Ignite, anything to ensure that there's a system service that keeps these things up. So I imagine that when the machine was shut down, the Ignite VMs got killed. And then when the machine comes back up, basically, yeah, the Ignite VMs are killed on shutdown. Nothing brings them back. No system service. And then on top of that, there's probably another issue, which is that, okay, can we provide a workaround for the user, right? Which is like perform a footloose up. Or I believe that's the command. Hold up 1 second. Let me just look at the footloose. Oops, I guess. Is it in WKS spin footloose? So there is a footloose start, right? What about workaround using footloose start from the Git repo managing the cluster? And then I believe what will happen is VMs may not have stable IPs, which could break Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So my question there is, does Firekoop not support restarting the cluster infra? If so, that might be something we need to fix at some point.
Yes, because they set up script of Firekoop and generate the config file with the hard-coded IP address started for starting up. So I think.
Well, as I reread the issue, is he expecting to be able to reboot the host?
Yes.
And have everything still be running when he comes back?
Yes. Or at least we don't want him to start over. I mean, starting over the cluster.
But that would imply that, yeah. Okay. If he reboots the host and he wants everything to come back up, which means Footloose is running, each of the Ignite machines is running.
With the same IP address. That's
which should work if we persist the CNI configuration across reboots, right?
If the IPs are stable, and then things should come up. If they are not stable, then I believe that, what is it? I believe the API server stores IP addresses about the control plane nodes into the cluster's state. Which means that the cluster will lose its control plane node if the control plane node does not come up with the same IP. I believe that's the requirement for Kubernetes, is that you need stable IPs for those.
Do we know? I guess we can go back and ask him. Right? Is Docker running when he reboots? Right? And if so, are those containers that are tied to the Ignite machine still running? Because I don't know enough about Firecracker. Does it restart the machines if they're in varlib? Because it may be. I mean, there may be multiple things failing here.
That is a really good question. And I believe that there's maybe a design issue.
Yeah, we have to moving parts here. I mean, at least at the Ignite level, we have container, and we have the Firecracker VM, and
because all that stuff's there.
I often see the rest condition. I mean, sometimes if I lost VM and the container controlling the VM still running. Sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, there's no statusing from the Ignite spawn process to ensure that VM is still up.
Yeah.
And it should kill itself, right? If it's not, it should either restart the VM or it should kill itself saying I'm not running, because that's when you get to issues when you try and clean up.
I also think that in virtual machine land, restarting machine and getting a different IP address is not typical. That's definitely an environment detail that is likely not present in most people's workloads. I think it is really funky, honestly, that we have like this runtime container that has a network interface inside of it that we're inheriting in the VM. Mm-hmm. And then when the VM stops, we delete that container. For one, there's a lot of reasons the VM could stop where Ignite is actually not watching, and then the container doesn't get deleted, so the IPs don't get released. And then two is because we deleted the container, we lost the network interface, we lost the IP address, it's now back into the pool. That IP address could get reallocated to another VM. It's no longer available when the VM restarts. I almost think, like, usually the subnets that people are working with are much larger than the VMs that they want to, than the number of VMs that they could potentially want to create on a single host. So it might be better to match the runtime container's lifecycle with the VM's lifecycle. That way we support things like restarting with stable IP addresses, even though you didn't specify the IPs.
So that's going to be the architecture change.
It is significant, yeah. That would be like a 0.07 thing.
I totally agree, because because we need to at least hook the life cycle of the container side, and then controlling the VM using the hook from the life cycle of the container. Otherwise, we can't solve this problem.
It's something to think about for sure. That may be something we want to do, because I would really like to tell this user that, like, you could just do a footloose start and the cluster will come up. But the real answer to that is it might come up. I mean, if you do a footloose delete, yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, but I mean, if they just reboot the machine, I would like to see the Ignite. I would like to see the Docker containers started back up and the Ignite machines back up, all with the same IP addresses, right?
Yeah,
that's really what we want to see happen.
Well, there's two layers here. One is that Ignite will need to support the restart always thing that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then two would be that Footloose would need to support the restart always option, which it might. but I don't know the answer to that. And then also we're getting Footloose movie results. We've got, I mean, I don't recall. Where can I look at the Footloose API? We only have examples, right? Customize OS image, run Apache, ports, Ansible, isolation, OpenShift. Basically in this spec section, we need to have like a restart policy of some sort. And I'm not positive that we do have that in Footloose as well, right? Like if you were using Ignite with the Docker backend, is there something that we can do in Firekube to make this happen already, right? Where it would work on restart. If we support that option, then that's an abstraction we can work with, right? But otherwise, there's now work in both projects that needs to happen to make this work.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think it would be, yeah, I think the machine is so independent of Firekube. If you restart a machine that's running Ignite VMs, VMs that were created from Ignite, then on restart, they should come back up. Yes. And then linking it to the Footloose and all that sort of stuff, is important as well, but not, I would think we start at the bottom and work our way up. That's just my 2 cents.
The container UX is that your processes would die unless explicitly told to be restarted.
Okay.
Because container UX is process centric.
Yep.
Right. So it's like if I run a container, like it naturally sticks around unless I tell Docker to remove it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I can get an interactive session with the process. So Docker will like attach like a pseudo terminal and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, when the container dies, the process is not restarted.
Yeah, but we need to keep these in sync, I think, is where I was coming from, right?
But then if I supply a restart option to Docker, then suddenly I get behavior that's more like a system service. Mm-hmm. Docker is capable of doing this because it has a daemon that's watching everything and keeping state about what's happening. And doing that is tricky. But they do it well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they keep stuff running.
Do they keep stuff running after a reboot of the host?
Yes. So the restart always option will do that.
Okay. So if you reboot the host. So yeah, because it just seems like if these are Ignite-based Firecracker VMs, we have to have our container running if the VM is running.
Yes. I believe that using, and I don't know what Containerd's support is for this. I presume that it's likely there. That
it's going to be similar, yes.
Yeah. There's likely some CRI or some Containerd spec option where you can ask the container to always be booted up.
Mm-hmm.
Or we might need to just store a manifest somewhere. But yeah, if we're reusing the container, then the CNI details will be the same. And this will change the restart behavior, likely for something that is more useful for people. Because right now, if you restart an Ignite VM using Ignite Restart, it'll come up with a different IP because it's hosted by a different container that's brand new. The old one doesn't exist anymore.
I have seen it reuse the same IP, but
It will reuse the same IP.
you and I talked about that.
Yeah,
You're right.
in a serial fashion,
If
because
nothing has started since,
yeah.
Yep.
Or also what you can stop it and then you can change the CNI details, and bring it up and it comes up with a new IP. But that's a use case that's interesting though, because if you're always reusing the same container and you can't like restart with a new container, then it becomes very difficult to move a VM to a different network. Right, which right now that's the default behavior, is it allows that to happen.
Oh, that's a good point.
Current behavior allows VMs to move onto a different network. This is a very important use case.
Yeah.
If we change this behavior, we should consider preserving this feature. So there's that. And then Footloose is, do we have restart policy support in general? Docker supports restart policy always to allow containers to act like services on host restart. We don't support this in Ignite yet.
So maybe
we need a Footloose abstraction with the current usage of Footloose in Firekube. Okay. Sorry, Mark. What were we saying?
Yeah.
I think I would. Yeah, I think I'm where you're at. I'm wondering if this is a high level thing in that it's tied to the Firekube, in that if you were to reboot your machine and run setup.sh again, it should be able to tell that it had data running before and bring everything up the way it was before, instead of rebuilding everything. Even if it gets new IP addresses, Kubernetes should still come up fine as long as we don't reset the VMs, right?
I think the unfortunate thing is that Kubernetes state is stored in etcd. Etcd storage is not split out in a simple way where you can be like, oh, I want this part and not that part. And I believe that the networking details that are used to keep the cluster stable, mainly the location of the control plane for the API server, I don't believe that those are fluid at this time. I don't think you can just change the IP of a control plane node. I could be wrong. Maybe there's work that's happened in newer cycles that's changed that. I know that the API servers keep a lease, but I'm not confident that the kubelets would actually be able to find the API server if it moved. So
that makes sense.
If you are using the same Kubernetes state backup, basically, like if you're attempting to use the same etcd, then those IPs have to be stable unless you're modifying something in a non-standard way. And then that's why people use like floating IPs and stuff, so that they can replace the VM infrastructure without clobbering the network. And then and you can use DNS, I think, as well. The kubelets will do a DNS lookup.
Yeah, I was going to say if it was host name and not IP address based, then it should work. on a restart, even if it gets new IP addresses.
We could do something to make that work, I believe, by leveraging the Docker networks, but it would not work in CNI without some additional work.
Okay.
And then as well, with regard to the setup SH stuff, recreating VMs, I'm not confident that we've actually split out the etcd storage from the VM storage. So if the VM's deleted, then the etcd backup is probably deleted, unless we did something to the Ignite spec to split it out into a separate device mapper or something.
Yep, I bet it is. So I guess I'm wondering, do we want to reach out to, what did you say this guy's name was, Jimmy, on the issue?
Yes, that's his name.
And see if he'd be, he's in Stockholm.
We could ask him to do a footloose start and see if things start up, because I think in practice, if you're doing nothing on a VM, there is a high likelihood that you will end up with the same IP addresses.
Yeah.
And that may be a suitable workaround for whatever he's trying to do. But I do think that there are design issues that we need to suss out before we have a clear answer for this issue.
And that's what I was going to say, is maybe we reach out to him and say, hey, can you attend our call next week and tell us how you think it should work?
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Get more feedback from him directly, maybe. But I don't know, just a thought.
I'm going to respond to this and just say, thanks for playing with this. I'm going to make sure that we're hearing and clearly stating what we think he's saying, which is that it's very reasonable to assume that since you installed Firekube on a node, that when you would reboot it, Kubernetes, and all of the Ignite VMs would still be running. Some design shortcomings that we are working through. I don't know, some design choices that we are working through currently mean that this does not happen. We discussed this issue in depth on the Ignite dev call. I'll add a link there to our notes. And then in short, Ignite not support restart. Docker Ignite's Ignite de-implementation is not finished. Ignite VM's IP adders are not theoretically stable. In practice, they may be quite stable depending on usage. Could you please cd to your Firekube repo and run footloose start after a reboot and see if the VMs come up and that they have the same IP addresses. Thanks so much. Would you have the time to join next week's November 11 Ignite Dev Call to talk about how you think this should all work? Cool. I'm actually going to add a line break here. And you I'll add a playful comment there about how to make that work. All right. All right. Well, we've fleshed that out very well. That is some very interesting stuff. Do we have any other comments about fixing all of the restartable host UX here?
Yep, I think so.
Okay. Well, that's pretty well documented. Yeah, I know you're working on a ton of stuff right now, Mark, but if you have any chance to open issues about this, I'm glad to flesh it out. It is Firekube related, so. And then you have this GitOps bit. So do you wanna talk about both of these things now? Feel free to take the floor.
Sure. I've got one blocking thing that I have to do. Just give me like 2 minutes.
Okay. So. Cool. Yeah. We can chill for a second. That. No, it's not a problem.
Maybe pause the recording or something, or you guys can chat. You guys can chat about it.
So, Chandler, have you had a chance to play with the Ignite D GitOps stuff?
Not much, but I understand the point that Mark said that there's problem about the UUID things or stuff around the reconcile process of the email. So basically, we might need to look at the reconcile algorithm inside Ignite, and that's a very that's a very algorithm things.
Yeah, there are a few even design choices that Mark and I were discussing in a one-on-one that we had last week about how our GitOps implementation in Ignite, the way that it's kind of been created, it commits some interesting status and network details back to the repository. Some of these, I believe, are done in good faith, but they may not be the perfect default behavior. I'm not sure if they're even a behavior that we want to fully support, because if you're committing status updates and IPs back, to the cluster, like we don't have the technical support from Ignite to say like restart a VM from nothing with the same IP address at the current point in time, right? So and all of that is hidden with Docker. You could probably do it easily because you can start containers with IPs. But now that we've moved to this Containerd CNI implementation, there are layers of abstraction where we can no longer reach those details, right? And so some of that stuff breaks when you move to these newer shiny things that aren't fully baked yet. And then there are usability problems. It doesn't generate an ID for you if you don't provide one, which would probably be a good behavior. I talked with Dennis about that before. He didn't think that it would be too hard to add that kind of a feature.
It's just awkward because, you need to generate something unique. The GUID is what I ended up doing, is just doing, GUID gen on my machine and sticking that in. And that seems to work fine, but makes it a pretty long ID for the machine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea is that's kind of what the current user experience is expected to be. So you ended up where I believe Dennis and Lucas thought the UX should start out with.
I just thought it should kind of match what the CLI gives us, right? I should be able to put a minimal machine manifest in there and get machines created via Ignite.
That is a really great comment about that, actually, right?
Right.
Yeah, the GitOps UX should not be such a jump, from the CLI UX.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Minimal manifests should produce good results.
Yep.
And things like UIDs are typically not important to people.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, it seems like, even a machine set kind of thing, which is where the cluster API went, you just want to say, hey, I need 4 of these and I want them to look like this, right? And we don't have that kind of support. And what the issue I ran into is I can create a repo based on basically an existing manifest and stick it in there. Ignite will start it. And then, as you said, it updates that manifest with the status information. And I can't go back to Git and add another manifest into it because the Ignite GitOps crashes, because it says, oh, I can't push back status changes. And then it crashes, right? Because the repository changes underneath it. So the Git processing either needs to sync it and realize there's no conflicts and just a new machine and add it. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's...
and that's how I want to demo it at KubeCon, right? I want to go in and say, hey, ideally what we'd like to do is go into Git and change the memory or the number of CPUs, and have Ignite D recreate that machine. That's what I'd love to see. But anyways,
push to the repo. So specifically, it's Ignite D can't push to the repo if the repo has been updated by the user, and it can't push status updates to the repo.
It can't push because it has to do a pull first, and it doesn't do that. And it's updating, it won't have any conflicts. So, or ideally it shouldn't have any conflicts, but.
Well, it does pull on a sync loop. So you may be able to get away with it working after whatever the default sync period is.
Okay, because I would think it would, on its reconciliation loop, right? It would start up, pull anything from the repo. If there's any differences in the manifest, make them happen, and then push status back. So yeah, if I had updated it between its pull and its push of status, maybe, and maybe that's what I did. And I just, every time I've done it, I've hit that window, but I'm skeptical.
So when it fails, Ignite D actually exits ungracefully.
Sometimes, yes. I haven't tracked it. I was just bringing my VM up here to see if I can see when it happens. But yeah, sometimes it fails, sometimes it doesn't, and that's
GitOps Ignite D process exits ungracefully. Need to validate full behavior is, and I'll just add that it's likely easy to reproduce. Okay, cool.
And actually, I got to drop for my next call, but
yeah, we've got maybe like 8 minutes of this time block yet left. Feel free to drop. Did you have any final comments about this Prometheus socket thingy?
just I was wondering if any of you guys have hit that to where I've noticed when I recreate a VM with the same name, right, or ID, it then fails because the Prometheus socket is still there. So I don't know if we're not cleaning up right, or I just haven't had enough time to dig into it and see. I'll spend some time, and if I can figure out what's happening there, then I'll do that. But the Prometheus socket is something I want to play with and show at KubeCon as well. So
Run into socket collision, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I get an error that says socket already running or something.
Fantastic. All right. That is a very pointed thing. So hopefully,
sorry, which version of Ignite you're using, Mark?
I was using 5.5, but the testing I started last night was 6 something. Hold on, I have my VM up and running right now. So yeah, it's 6 plus. So I'm using a Git version that I have
So
locally.
you're planning to demonstrate with the 06?
Yes. Yeah. Lee and I talked, and we decided I should demo with 6.
Okay.
And that would be with the Containerd backend and not Docker. So now I'll have to figure out how that affects my slides where I say that the UX is the same, but I'll figure that out. Well, I got to drop.
Okay, cool. Thank you for joining, Mark, and having all these useful issues.
Sure, guys. Thanks. Yeah. Good talking to you.
Cool.
See ya.
Yep. Okay. Anything? Do you have any comments, Chamet?
We have plenty of things to fix before KubeCon. Yeah, definitely. Maybe we prioritize things, and I think the GitHub, the Ignite D things. I think that's
the Ignite D GitOps stuff. You think that's something we should prioritize?
That should take priority. Yes.
Should we prioritize it, or should we just not demo it?
We should be prioritized to get its. How many days we have? 10 days. 12 days. And we should prioritize on fixing at least to make your demo a bit more smooth. And
how much bandwidth do you have to work on that? Because I don't have much bandwidth. I have to do add-on stuff before KubeCon.
I was planning to get back to fix things by this week, but unfortunately Unfortunately, I still get something to do um, with the provide things. So I think I should have like a week for this, probably after, but by the mid of this week, probably I can get back to take a look at Ignite and start.
I I would have time to pair program with you, but I don't have the context or bandwidth to pick up this issue fresh.
Right.
So
Right.
if you want to pick up the GitOps stuff and try to deliver it, then I'm
Yep.
willing to jump on some calls with you to help debug and uh, figure out what the implementation should be. But I can't lead it.
But in general, this gonna be the feature I'm going to use with virtual kubelet too, because
Yeah.
we can't pack the Ignite into the container just like what I did anymore, because the loop back permission denied. So
We need to, I mean, we have an open issue for that, I think, as well, right? With Ignite
you
not starting in the container. Like, there's a reason why that's not working. We just don't understand it. There should be a way to run it in a container.
Yeah, I did some research and found that the there's a permission issue. There's a security issue that the root user inside container cannot do um, some mount loop things. Cannot do some mount loop back things. So,
Okay, we should post that evidence to an issue that about the Ignite not starting in the container, I guess.
I tried it once or twice and found that, and I don't know why. Yeah, we still don't know why the 04 0.4 version of Ignite was working fine inside the container, but after that, not working anymore.
Yeah, 05 doesn't work either, right?
That's what we.
But 04 was.
Yeah, what was.
Okay. We, I mean, I think it's a good thing to support because people do that kind of stuff in container land all the time.
Anyway, we should prioritize Ignite fixing background.
Okay.
Useful for both your demo and KubeCon and to me too.
Yeah. I would just, the only thing I would say is, if you and I are working toward the Ignite D bug fixes and the GitOps stuff is not ready by Ignite, then we can just drop that from the slides and it's okay. We don't have to demo the GitOps stuff. So, but yeah, let's try to make it happen. Let me know how I can support you in that work. But yeah, my bandwidth is low because I want to get some of the add-ons stuff into KubeADM before KubeCon. So okay, well, we've got a lot of meat here in this meeting, and yeah, Mark promised that he would do some project management issues opening, so we'll have some place to move these comments to for work. We did have those folks who reached out to us from the university who wanted to contribute. Maybe they can help. I'm not sure how capable they are, but yeah. and then I will close out what we need to do, and we can probably end this meeting. Do you have anything else?
That's fine.
Okay, cool. I'll get this posted up. Thanks so much, Janwit.
Thank you.
Feel free to ping me, please. I haven't
Yeah,
chatted with
sure.
you in a little bit, so yeah.
Okay.
Stop.